Hello nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel where once again we have a new video for you guys. Today we are going to be reviewing a book that I read during the big move of 2024, and that is none other than Pulp by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. This is a book that I've mentioned in a multitude of shorts and live streams, saying how much I really enjoyed it, and I do feel like it is deserving of its own review and video, so here we are today. But before we jump into the details of the book, a quick reminder that if you are interested in picking up any of the books or titles that I feature on my channel, to use the channel sponsor organicpricebooks.com. You can use the discount code STAYNERDY for $2 off your order, or if you're ordering 4 or more books, you can use the code STAYNERDY, ship it together, to save yourself 5% on that entire order. Both of those codes are great ways to not only support the amazing company of OPB, but also the channel. So thank you for that, and those of you that decide to use that code. But let's go ahead and jump into the details of the book. So this oversized hardcover edition was published by Image Comics and was written by Ed Brubaker with art by Sean Phillips. It does have a cover price of $39.99, and there is technically 2 page counts, and I want to make sure to make emphasis on that because one set of page count is for everything that is included in this specific edition, the processed edition, and the other page count is just the story. So the entire page count of this processed edition is 256 pages, majority of that being extras going through the process of creating this story, but the story itself is 80 pages and that's it. So if you do want to get your hands on the smaller hardcover and just get the story, you can do that as well. But I am going to give this a mature rating for those of you that are interested in reading it. This is not for kids. This is going to be for my adult readers, mainly because of violence. But with the details of the book out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the overhead shots, talk a little bit about not only this edition, but also the story. And here we are, nerds and nerdettes. Pulp by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. This is the process edition. Taking a quick look at the spine, we do have a stark white spine with the specific edition and its creators. And then we do have on the back some blurbs here from the Library Journal and Joe Hill, who is the creator of Lock and Key. But that does wrap up the outside of the book. So let's take a quick look at the actual binding, and then we can jump into the internals and talk a little bit about the story. And here we are with the binding. As you can tell, it is a small yet mighty eye. I had no issues with gutter loss or the book just feeling flimsy or weak in any regard. So it is a very well put together binding for this specific collected edition. All right, let's get into the book, but before we jump into the actual internals, I do want to show off the end pages here, which I do think is a great detail to this particular book. You do have it on the front and the back. It's a great detail and it adds even more to the reading experience. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the actual internals, or what's collected here. So we do open up with a title page here. Pulp, very stark white, very reminiscent of that spine. And then we do have the creators page, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, with contributions by Jacob Phillips. And then we get into an introduction by Ed Brubaker. This is what I would count as the beginning of the process of the processed edition. Now, what do I mean by that? The first 3/4 of the book is the entire production process of this particular story, from notes that Ed Brubaker scratched down initially coming up with the idea, to the design of the covers or the cover, to the actual trailer itself, to storyboarding, scripting, paneling, lettering, down to creating the color palette for this specific story that is going to help get the mood and tone of this story across. They really go into great detail about every single aspect of the production process of this particular story. So that's what you're going to be getting in this specific collected edition. There is a smaller standard size hardcover that collects just the 80-page story and does not collect all of this extras here, but I do recommend this for fans of extras, as you would probably guess. This is the most in-depth any type of collected edition has went when it comes to the behind-the-scenes workings of creating a comic book, a graphic novel, or anything like that. So if you are curious about the behind the scenes, or maybe you want to create a comic book yourself, this would be a great addition to have in your library to kind of call back to and check out, to understand even more about what goes on during the creation of a project like this. But if you are not a fan of extras, if you find yourself skipping past the introduction in omnibuses or variant covers in deluxe editions, then you might want to skip this particular format of this story and get the standard sized hardcover instead. And honestly, reading it in any format is completely fine as long as you're reading the story, because it is one that I do recommend anybody reading. It is an incredible story, a short yet mighty story, and you can read it in one sitting and it is going to impress you thoroughly. So I do recommend everyone reading the story, but what format you collected it in, mileage may vary when it comes to that. But we can skip forward to the actual story, so we don't dive too deep into the extras, saving a little bit of mystery for those of you that do like the extras and want to go over the extras yourself. And then here we are finally jumping into the story. And if you don't believe me that it's 3/4 of the book, here we are, 3/4 of the book in. Here's the processed aspect of this book, and here's the actual story. So it is a large amount of this book. So just be aware when hunting down this in whatever format you decide to go. So what is Pulp? Pulp is a graphic novel that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips put together, and it was not ever a single issue story. It was a graphic novel that was released in a what we would consider a collected edition, very similar to that of European comics, and that is the only way that it was essentially released up until this point now, where we have finally a oversized hardcover edition, which would be this format. And then, like I said, there is a standard size hardcover edition as well, but it is a all-in-one beginning, middle, and end story. There is no branch-offs, spin-offs, extra story elements, nothing. This is the story, and this is all you really need, if I'm being honest. But so the story itself does pick up with the character of Max, who is a comic book creator. He is specifically a comic book creator that writes and creates pulp Western comic books. And the reason that he does that is because he gets his inspiration from his past life of being a Western outlaw, doing your typical gunslinger acts, which are things like train robberies and duels and being hunted down by Pinkerton agents, you name it. That's what Max was essentially doing, and that's where he's getting his inspiration from. And you do follow him later in his life, questioning a lot of aspects of life, such as legacy, what we leave behind for those that we love once we pass away, one's process or what one's purpose in life, and what they are kind of meant to do in the short time that we have on this earth. And you get to see Max really go through it, questioning all of those aspects of life that we probably find ourselves questioning as well, until eventually he is forced to make some decisions with a not so friendly but familiar face, being extremely vague there for a reason, but it is absolutely incredible. It goes in a direction I don't think anyone would expect, and when it comes to the actual ending, I really don't think anybody would expect it, but it is so fitting, so incredible, goes perfectly with the actual tone of the story. It is heartbreaking, but also satisfying at the same time, which is probably very conflicting for you guys to hear me say, but that's the best way I can kind of describe it. And it is such an incredible story. It's 80 pages, and it just shows that quality is always better than quantity. The length of the story has nothing to do with the impact or the splash that it creates, and it is so great. I highly recommend all of you reading it in whatever edition you can get it in, but this is where we're going to stop, so we do avoid some spoilers, but an absolutely incredible story. So let's go ahead and head back to the table for some closing thoughts. A quick synopsis on our story. So this does follow our character of Max, who is a comic book creator in New York in 1939. He specifically creates Western pulp comic books, which little to the reader's knowledge, which you will find out through reading. So it may be a minor spoiler to some story elements, but Max does base these Western comics off of his real life events as a Western outlaw in 1892. Max is no longer an outlaw, and he is living a honest life with a wife, bars, and he does eventually come face to face with a not so friendly face, and that is an ex-Pinkerton agent that used to hunt him back when he was an outlaw. So now, with age catching up to Max, he is forced to make some decisions or potentially leave his wife behind. But that is the most I'm going to give you about the story, so let's go ahead and jump into the writing. Ed Brubaker needs no introduction. He knows how to write an incredible story full of amazing characters, and that's exactly what you will be getting here. The story is heart-racing. The characters are extremely relatable and original. I think the idea behind Max writing comics about his heyday as a outlaw back in the Western days is so creative and so original, something I would have never thought of, and I don't think a lot of other creators wouldn't have thought of as well. On its simplest form, this is a modern Western, at least more modern than most Westerns, but there are so many other elements to this story. This touches on life and legacy and what we leave behind once we eventually pass away, and it also has some narration when it comes to the political climate of this particular time, or the time that this book is set in, and I think that is a great element as well, one I was not expecting, which is kind of a theme that I ran into a lot during the reading of this particular title, because the ending itself was something I 100% did not see coming, and it really shocked me, but at the same time it was incredibly fitting to the characters and tone of the book overall. Sean Phillips also needs no introduction. His art only adds that much more to the story. Every single page and panel is gritty yet clean, textured and emotional, which just adds that much more to the story and the tone of the story overall. And then you also have the colors that add that much more, because there's almost a film grain or filter over every single page, whether that be a orange filter or a purple or blue, whatever it may be, and it just adds so much more emotion, tone, and feeling into every single page, every single panel, and it really is a master at work when it comes to the artwork throughout this entire book. So now for my overall reading experience, I was absolutely blown away. I am going to recommend this to any fan of Clint Eastwood movies, because it does have a very similar tone and vibe, almost like they're from the same vein. So if you do like those films, this might be a book for you. Also, anybody that is a fan of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, they are a very well-known team in comics at this point, and I think they are able to stand next to greats like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, or Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley, just to name a few. So they are major, major names in comics for a reason, and if you like all of their other books that they've done together, then you're probably going to absolutely love this one as well. But this book is a great example of why sometimes less is more. Quantity is not better than quality in pretty much all cases, because this entire story is 80 pages, which sounds so wrong for me to be saying, but it is, and it is that good. I do recommend it to you guys. Please check it out if you haven't already, and if you can get your hands on the processed edition, I do recommend that as well, because the entire 3/4 of the book before you even get to the story is some really, really cool production stuff that you get to hear from Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, when it comes to every single aspect of creating a comic book. So if you were ever interested in creating a comic book or what goes on behind the scenes, this is going to be a great book for you. But my rating for Pulp, the processed edition, or Pulp, the story in general, is going to be a 9.1. It was so incredible. I cannot believe an 80-page story knocked my socks off the way this story did, and I highly recommend you guys checking it out. And that does wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate each and every one of you guys that do tune in, but I do want to hear from the community. I want to hear what you all think of Pulp, if you've read it, if you're interested in reading it. But leave those comments down below. Let me know your reviews, what you thought about the book. My thoughts, my review doesn't matter more or less than anybody else in the community, so leave those comments down below. But if you are watching this and you are not a part of the Illuminati, hit that subscribe button and join today. It is still my favorite place on the internet, and if you could do me a favor and hit that thumbs up icon, it really goes a long way for the channel. And if you want to be notified anytime I put out content, ring that little bell. But thank you for watching once again, and of course, stay nerdy.